Welcome everyone to the Lights Out F1 podcast. Got Patrick over here, Jakob down there, and I'm Claire. This is a fan-based F1 podcast if you haven't been here yet. And today we're going to talk about the race that happened last night for us, 12 a.m. to like 3:30 was it, guys?
Yeah,
2:30, something like that. The Australian Grand Prix. Great race, lot to get into. So, yeah, we're gonna start with just impressions of the race. Patrick.
Um, I thought it was good for a lot of it until first Alex crashed and then Logan crashed and Williams had to take an L, but it's okay. We were doing better than we expected, so. But outside of that, I think it was actually a pretty good race, very eventful. Um, I think there were some unnecessary calls made by the FAA, but it was pretty good. I'd give it like an 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10, okay. Jakob?
I liked it. I mean, it was action packed. You didn't have too many laps under a safety car. You had a Hamilton podium, which I was like, so yeah. But yeah, overall, I give it like a solid 8.5. I thought it was a good race to watch.
Yeah, I think I'd give it like a 9 because I had the luxury of waking up this morning and watching it and being able to fast forward through the red flags and them just sitting there. But I think that I know that the red flags, we'll get into it, was a little perhaps unnecessary, but I think it made it a little more exciting, more racing time, less time under the safety car. What do you guys think about that?
Um, I don't know. The red flags, I feel like the first one with Alex was kind of unnecessary because they had everything they needed to clean it up, and the barrier wasn't like exceedingly damaged, so it was kind of pointless. And I mean, the stewards could have easily just swept up the gravel and just like shifted the barrier back to where it was. And I mean, the safety car was doing a great job at holding up the rest of the field. So I think the red flag there was unnecessary. And also the restart was kind of annoying, just because like it was just really slow. Like a lot of the cars in the back had no clue what's going on, so I'm not sure. They showed it, but like 6 cars were piled up on top of each other, and they couldn't even see around the corner, and so it was like they almost all crashed into each other before we even got started. So, uh, yeah, the first one was definitely unnecessary. Um, I forgot what the second one was called out for, honestly.
Kevin Magnussen,
Oh
I
yeah,
think. Or,
K-Mag's
yeah.
rear left, is it? Rear right wheel coming off. After a slight tap with the barrier. Um, and that one makes sense. I mean, there's a wheel in the middle of the road and a Haas that you can't wheel off the track, so that makes sense. Um, yeah, it made for what should have been a last lap shootout or a last 2 lap shootout. Um, and then the third one with the Alpines and Fernando and Carlos, the distraught man. Yeah, I mean, a lot of red flags. I think this is the first race ever with 3 red flags. So,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
but yeah.
Jakob, any thoughts?
Um, I thought the first one was unnecessary, but I was like, I didn't really have a particular issue with it because it gave us less laps under safety car and more laps of racing. Second one, I guess, had more reason to it because of K-Mag and the wheels there and debris and all of that. So, I mean, I didn't really have an issue with the red flag. I get like why people were upset about it, but I didn't really have an issue with it. I thought like, you had more laps of racing, less laps under the safety car. So I was fine with the decisions. Maybe not 5 second fines, but I was fine with the decisions.
Okay. Why don't we go through the teams and talk about the drivers and their races? Perhaps starting with George. I think he got a virtual safety car for his retirement,
Yeah,
correct?
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, just a virtual because he was in the pit lane. But he was leading the race after turn one.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
It was a fantastic start from him. I mean, Yako was probably beaming. He's like, Merc, I'm pretty sure you told me at one point Merc won too, and I was like, I'm okay with this as long as it's George out front. Like, seeing George win another race would be amazing. But it wasn't to be. I'd still say it's a really good weekend for Mercedes, but I think it's kind of representative of the same thing that they had last season, where they thrive in cooler conditions. And I mean, it just showed again through qualifying in the race this year?
Um, my opinion is that even if George had not retired, I think Lewis would have beat him out for second place because you assume Max is going to win. So I think Lewis would have won because it just even in the laps that George was leading, Lewis just had so much more pace. Like
So DRS?
and George was like maybe George was conserving tires and like driving slowly to back to back up Lewis into Alonso, but it just to me on pure pace it looked like Lewis was all over the rear of George. So I think Lewis gets second or third, beats out George in that race either ways. But
I'm pretty
yeah, it
sure
was a
when they talked
good
about it,
result.
pretty sure when they talked
Hmm?
about it post race.
Yeah, you just had George whining about it.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
it was
post
on
race it
radio.
was they were trying to keep the two Mercedes with each other. Like George had to keep slowing down to keep Lewis in DRS range. That was the only way that they were gonna keep Max back.
Yeah, I mean, but eventually Max is going to get through. So
I wouldn't say that
I
much. I mean,
mean,
getting past two at the same time would not be easy.
I'm
No,
saying,
but you saw
yeah,
how Max just breezed by Lewis
That
later,
was
so
after he didn't have DRS though.
yeah, I mean, yeah, fair. But yeah, overall good weekend for Mercedes, good weekend for Lewis. Yeah,
Uh,
let's start talking about Red Bull, perhaps. Checo starting from the pit lane to end up P5 was an amazing drive. And Max, although he had a shaky start, he ultimately showed his dominance in the end to pull out the P1.
I mean, yeah, we all expected it. Even Jakob, even though the two Mercedes were together, we were still expecting Max to get by. And I don't think Checo was gonna have a problem making it through anybody in the field, save for maybe Alonso on the Mercedes. So we were
yeah,
expecting to at least make it that far, at least P6 for him. So this is kind of expected.
yeah. I think obviously Max's starts weren't that great because you saw George get the better of him, and then Lewis got the better of him with that crazy move down the inside. So, um, but for Checo, I think it was a good weekend for him, but in the long term, it's not looking good for his championship play because I think this will just give the excuse to Red Bull to start prioritizing Max because I don't know how far back he is, but um, I can see this being used as an excuse. But otherwise, it was a great drive for him. Great drive for both the Red Bulls.
So it really wasn't actually a good weekend for Checo, I think, with his qualifying and practice issues. He definitely turned it around for the race, but he was really struggling, and I don't think it was like clear cut that he was going to make it all the way back through the field with a mental block that comes with having bad qualifying, bad practices. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, it's the same thing that happens. Max, outside of I mean, they both struggled with something with the car during each qualifying session. You kind of even if it's a bad weekend for Red Bull, it's similar like how Mercedes used to be. A bad weekend for them is P5. A good weekend for them is you're expecting a P1, P2.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good recovery weekend from how the weekend started for Checo. It was a good recovery to P5. Um, so I mean, I think we were all expecting him to qualify for front row and give Max a good fight Max to the win, but that didn't happen. So good recovery. Up next is Baku, I think.
Yep.
So he is extremely good at Baku. So we'll see if he can get back into the championship fight. He's 15 points down right now. So he needs to close that gap if he wants to be considered a contender. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Big bummer this weekend was Ferrari. They scored 0 points with Charles's DNF at the first lap incident with Lance Stroll, and Carlos's penalty that just we don't know if that was it good, was it not good? What are your opinions on that, perhaps?
The Carlos penalty couldn't be avoided. I mean, he caused Alonso to spin, which then caused Gasly to avoid, and then he couldn't see Ocon. Ocon couldn't know what's happening. He caused all the cars to back up, meaning that Sargent had to hit the back of DeVries, and just it I think it ended like 5 people's races at the same time. So a second per person, I'd say that's pretty good. But outside of that, Charles, I mean, that's entirely his fault. As much as we want to say, you know, Lance is like a vegetable or an idiot or whatever, like it's you can't close the door from the outside. Lewis tried doing it last year at Belgium. He got knocked out of the race, and now Charles tried doing it this year. It's like it's all your fault. You can't blame anybody for it. But very bad weekend for them.
With this finish for Charles, he's now P10 in the championship, I believe. So Hulkenberg is ahead of him. Lando Norris is ahead of him. Jakob, what are your thoughts on your Ferrari Golden Boy?
For Leclerc, look, I don't know if I was trying to pull up his driver cam, but look, he binned it. They chalked it up to a first lap incident, so it is what it is. But I disagree with Patrick on Carlos's penalty. Yeah, he caused the incident, but the only incident that he really caused was Alonso's loss of P3, but the FIA just gave back Alonso's P3. So, realistically, the incident had no effect on Alonso, so I don't think that 5-second penalty was justified. Give him penalty points on his license, fine, but I don't think that 5 seconds was justified. But for Ferrari, horrible weekend in general. No points. Charles will go into the next race low on confidence, probably low on motivation as well. So we'll see what happens. And last year they both DNF'd, if I remember right, in Azerbaijan. So it's bad omens all around for the Scuderia Ferrari.
Yeah. So I do have to say, I think Carlos did sort of lead to the mayhem with all the other cars DNFing after he hit Alonso. So it's like you can't say that he just affected Alonso's race. He really did affect everyone else because of the downstream effects of having to avoid Alonso after he got booted. Don't you think, Patrick? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a massive domino effect. It's just too many people having to do too many things. And I mean, when you have a car horizontal in the middle of the road, it's a lot to avoid.
I don't agree with it simply because they went back to the original results, so everyone kept their same positions. Nobody
except for those that DNF'd.
No, they all kept it. They went back to the starting order, didn't they? Like
No,
before
so everybody who DNF'd didn't get a position back. So the Alpines who were both in the points lost out. Basically, everybody who was in the points that DNF lost out on all their points. Alpine were on for a pretty good result, and I mean, it just messed up the entire weekend for them.
Okay,
yeah. Why don't we?
Maybe the penalty was justified, but I don't know.
Yeah. So on that note, should we talk about Alpine? Pierre Gasly had a stellar drive before his crash with teammate Esteban Ocon. Thoughts? How did he get up there?
The Alpine car was just really fast this weekend, like all weekend long. They weren't showing it in free practice, which is something that seems to be trending with them. Like every single time we go into free practice, they seem like they're really slow, and then you get to qualify in the race, and they're just so quick. And I mean, everybody was talking about all weekend how like 4 DRS zones for a car that's really good in a straight line is great for Alpine. And he was keeping pace with Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso and Lewis up ahead. They're all like maybe 2 seconds apart each. And then, yeah, it's just an unfortunate crash. But I think a lot of people will be like, oh, well, Ocon and Pierre Gasly crashed. I'm like, it wasn't teammate fault. It was just a racing incident. There's nothing that could have been done. Gasly couldn't see Ocon coming. Ocon couldn't have known what was going to happen there, so...
I mean, I agree with that to an extent. I mean, my prediction was that they'd be the first 2 teammates to crash out of a race. That's what happened. Now it's none of their fault, so like I don't think that tension that would have built up had that been like an actual racing incident, had that actually been during a race and they had crashed out, that tension is not there because it was Sainz's fault, I guess, because of the domino effect. But yeah, it was a good weekend for the both of them. Gasly was like kept within DRS of Sainz, he wasn't like dropping off as you thought he might. But yeah, kind of a waste, I guess now. But let's just hope it doesn't affect the rest of the season. I guess the incident as such, because I think at least when I was watching the onboards, I thought that Gasly drifted too far on towards the inside and just acted as if no one was going to be there. He should have stayed his line as opposed to constantly moving. So it is what it is. But we'll see how they do it. I think Azerbaijan is going to be a good weekend for them.
Yeah. All right. Now let's talk about Aston Martin. Lance, he had an okay race to come back after his antics with Charles, and Fernando, of course, was driving stellar.
Yeah, actually, I think this is probably one of the not so good weekends for Aston Martin. They seem like they're going to be fast all weekend, but Fernando couldn't get within DRS range of Lewis for the entire race. Lance was just stuck. Like, nobody was passing him. He wasn't passing anybody. Just really stuck in like P6 for the longest time. It just felt like a slow race for both of them. Not, of course, slow in consideration of the other top four or others of the top four, but it's like it just didn't feel like a fantastic weekend. And even though you kept on hearing Lewis over the radio say like, the guys behind me are so quick or anything like that, it's like Fernando was never getting closer than 1.5 seconds, and Lance wasn't going anywhere anytime. So I feel like it's just like a kind of okay weekend. I mean, another podium for Fernando, so good for him, but not much there.
All things considered, though, they did score their best results as a team, 3 and 4. So the biggest points all of the season so far.
Yep.
For their most average, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know if it's maybe it was just a track. I mean, it just seemed like the Mercedes had more pace in the according to Lewis, had more pace in the straights, and Alonso was quicker in the corners. I didn't expect Lance to make any really sort of impression on top 4. He finished 4th, I think, but I don't think he was going to make any impression on the top 3. Had, let's just say, Leclerc and Perez been up there as well, I don't think he was making any impression on the top 3 either ways. Yeah, I mean, average weekend for them. I think maybe a spot of concern considering the Mercedes was able to keep them at bay for most of the race, if not all of the race. Yeah, otherwise a good weekend for them. Points, they're still maintaining P2. Fernando's P3 in the constructors, so and the drivers championship. So good weekend for them.
Yeah, so Alonso got his 105th podium, and stats suggested that every driver that got their 105th podium, it was a win. So it's just kind of like a coincidence. 101st?
Yeah, because Jeddah was 100th.
Okay, then 101st.
Yeah.
So that's what the stat was, 101st. So everyone was hoping that, he'd get his 33rd win today if he got his podium.
Yep.
But stats are not to be trusted, like we learned last year with Lewis Hamilton. Just because it's been that way doesn't mean it's going to continue. So he kind of disappointed maybe some people, and you could tell on his face that he was kind of like, okay, I guess 3rd place again, but like I need to be fighting for P2, P1. He's now getting tired of getting P3 after.
That much. I mean, I think the reason he was so tired at the end of the race is he's just tired. Him, Lewis, and like everybody at the top was there. Like, I mean, everybody in the race must have been exhausted because there wasn't any reprieve of a pit stop. There was like nothing. It was just like, okay, all you have to do is manage your hard tires for 56 laps. And like when he heard the red flag come on, he's like, really, a red flag? Like, and when they zoomed in on his face, he looked exhausted. I'm like, all the drivers are like this. So I don't know. I don't think he's actually expecting to challenge for 1st or 2nd, just because when the Red Bulls are up there, maybe 2nd this race, but he wasn't making an impression on Lewis. The Mercedes were just strong this weekend, and I don't think anyone's making an impression on Max.
Okay.
Yeah,
but they did have, the red flag breaks, like where they got out of the car sometimes.
I'm pretty sure Alonso. Fernando's just stayed in like all the red flags.
Could have.
Yeah.
You saw Lewis.
Yeah. it's like Bottas. I remember in 2020 and 2021, whenever there was a red flag, he actually never
Just want to
got.
stay in it. Yeah.
Yeah, he just stayed in the car. So a lot of drivers just stay in the car and because like it's easier for them to keep going. So, but he did look tired. Like you thought like when they doing that second red flag, I think when they panned in on Alonso and like the radio was playing, he just looked
Just
like let's just get this race over with.
Even though he was tired, he was still like mentally on it though.
Oh, 100
Yeah.
percent.
After the last restart, he was like playing all the scenarios through like,
Yeah.
oh, they're gonna have to go back to the order of like what because we didn't finish a sector, and like he had that going in his head after he got hit by Sainz. So
Yep.
he's on it, even though he was looking tired, I guess. It just shows you all of the multitasking these drivers can do under extreme pressure. Okay, so talked about Mercedes, Red Bull,
Yes,
Aston Martin, Ferrari, Alpine. We want to get to
baby.
McLaren? Let's go.
This will be their highest point scoring finish of the season.
Go.
Yeah.
Fired, rude.
It's nothing against them. It's just like
Rude.
Lando was fighting for P9 and
So
Oscar
rude.
was fighting for P12.
We have 20 races left this season. You don't think something else crazy could happen where they score
Of
better?
course, crazy things are gonna happen, but like on merit, I'm pretty sure they're probably not gonna get this high of point scoring position this season.
So what? Much of this sport is just luck.
Don't get me wrong, fantastic for them to score that many points, awesome. And I think it was good, especially for Oscar's confidence, to score in his home race. Lando finally get in the points and not be sitting behind, a Williams. But yeah, it's just like, I mean, they were fighting for 2 points and then they ended up with 12 points. So a good end of the race for them, but I don't think it was that great of a race for them, or a weekend actually.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. But, they got launched up to P5, so not much you can say. Even if teams are better than them in performance, like,
yeah,
did they get the points?
It's great.
No.
I'm happy for them, but
McLaren did.
Yeah, just not seeing this again.
You don't think like a little bit of a confidence boost going into a 3-week break is good for them? I think it is. I think
a confidence boost. They're also getting their major update that they were supposed to have at the start of the year for Baku. So hopefully we'll see them fighting for those types of positions on merit, but it probably won't be for like P5, P6. It'll probably be for P9, P10, just because breaking into the top 8 is something that most of the bottom teams can't do right now.
Well, it was nice to see Lando fighting. I think it was Hulkenberg. They were actually like duking it out for overtakes on each other. So it was good to see some good ones.
It was cool to see Lando hold up Perez for like, well, how many laps he did? He did hold up Perez. All right, 2 laps.
Okay, well he was told not to fight too hard.
You're incredible. Because he just breezed past Hulkenberg and everybody else after that. So, and the fight with Hulkenberg was good. I don't know if I agree that it will be their highest scoring position this season. I don't anticipate them.
My guy.
I don't anticipate them getting any higher than P5 in a race, but we'll see what the Baku upgrade brings them to.
All right. You want to talk about Haas? K-Mag, disappointed this race. Nico, though, he was there at the right time. Basically, K-Mag just the rule of thumb is don't run into the wall, and he did that.
Yeah, I mean, the tires were so old. They were on lap 53 or whatever, and like. Everybody's tire saving at this point in the race. Like nobody's going for overtakes outside of Checo, and that's because Checo is the best at tire saving. But it's literally you have to be faultless. And I mean, when you're running where K-Mag was, and you're not even in the points, you have no reason to be hitting the wall.
Yeah, for sure. Thoughts, Jakob?
I mean, I don't know if Oh, Hulkenberg had a good race. I know Haas have protested the results to see if they can get Hulkenberg the podium.
It was dismissed.
Oh, it was dismissed?
Yeah.
Okay, great. No podium for Hulkenberg again. uh, but yeah, K-Mag's incident was weird. I mean, because like I saw an interview he was giving, and he said that I didn't even feel the car hit the wall; it just happened.
I didn't know it hit the
And
wall.
yeah, neither did I. I was like, how did
I
you
was like, you're in the
how'd you
grass, but I didn't actually see it hit the wall. And then Claire sent me a
Yeah,
video,
I
and I was
thought
like,
like
it
maybe
grazed it.
someone like, yeah, I thought maybe someone hit him, but like then the replay happened. So I mean, he wasn't competing for points. So overall, I mean, what did they lose? A little bit of money to repair the car. So
You never know, like with the way it ended up with other cars DNFing, like that's how the McLarens took advantage of it.
You should
And
be thanking K-Mag because he gave McLaren all their points.
thank you, K-Bag. Thank you so much for running into the wall and popping your tire off, making me think, wow, those cars look weird without wheels. So yeah, Hulkenberg did the best he could. He got a P7 finish, which was great for Haas. All things considered, they had a pretty mid, just kind of actually bad weekend leading up to it. So, because I think he did qualify P10. That was pretty good.
It wasn't a bad weekend for Hulkenberg. It was a good weekend for him, actually. I'll give him that. He qualified. I mean, he's a qualifying machine in the Haas. It's just, I'm glad we got to see some race pace out of him because in both Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, whether it be for damage or just driving purposes, he wasn't showing race pace. And today he showed some viable race pace to match up with his qualifying, and he secured points off of it. So, good weekend for him.
Okay, now let's talk about Alfa Romeo Sauber. I just feel like they're set adrift without Fred Vasseur. They just haven't been making inroads really, except for Joe had a good result this race, but Valtteri Bottas has just fallen off. I don't even see him anymore racing.
I don't think they showed him a single. I think the commentators were talking about it. I don't think they showed a single frame of him this race. It was kind of wild given the fact that he's like the second Australian on the grid, but like.
I was disappointed. I wanted to see him race.
But Joe, on the other hand, Joe is actually like proving that he can be in the midfield. He's qualifying relatively well. He was still in the bottom 5 that got knocked out, but like he's out qualifying Bottas, who's been known as a qualifying machine, and his race pace isn't terrible. I mean, he's been fighting for like P13, P12, which is better than like 7 other people apparently, but yeah, Bottas is just not anywhere to be seen right now.
yeah, not a great weekend for Alfa Romeo. 9th and 11th, so good points at least for Joe. But Valtteri, I think, bit of a low the last 2 races. I'm sure he'll come back stronger. He's pretty good at Baku, so I'm hoping to see a good strong weekend from him. But yeah, this race last 2 races have just seemed like a bit of a low for Valtteri in terms of the way he's driving and just not making any real inroads with the car and inroads in terms of overtaking and stuff. So yeah, hopefully Azerbaijan is better for him.
All right, AlphaTauri got Nick De Vries, who was having a pretty good race until he got yeah.
Again,
and then Yuki Tsunoda got his points, finished P10.
Yes, he did. Thankfully, he didn't set that record of being one of the only drivers to ever get 11th place 3 times in a row. He was gonna get it, but he's good now. Hopefully he can. I mean, he's been fighting for that 1 point like almost every race. So I mean, he's finally got it, and I think he'll probably still be fighting for that 1 point almost every race. AlphaTauri brought a pretty decent upgrade, and you can see the pace of it. I'm still not impressed by Nick De Vries.
Yuki didn't even get the floor though because he damaged it during practice.
Yeah. I'm still not impressed by Nick De Vries, honestly. I mean, even before he got hit by Logan, he's still fighting for P14. And I mean, we were all talking about like how Nick De Vries is gonna like stomp all over Yuki, and I've yet to see it. He's not qualifying better. He's not racing better. It's just like, and yeah, we can say that Yuki's had more time in the sport, but I mean, we were all expecting much higher victories. Fighting for P14 shouldn't be where he is. And even if he gets punted out of the race by Logan, like, you got punted out when you were in P15, and you got DNF'd in P15, and Logan was still behind you in the standings for it, but not impressed by him right now.
Jakob, you gonna defend your boy?
Yeah, of course I'm going to defend Nick DeVries. I think the argument is, I think that Yuki has not just had more time in the sport, but he's also had more time in that car. And that car is a pretty slow car. It's a shitbox, in my opinion.
Yep.
It's not really so. And I think the thing with Nick is, I think he has not just had to adjust to the car being a shitbox, because last year he was driving. Well, he drove the Williams, so same thing. But I think it's adjusting to the car and adjusting to like the whole factor of the Red Bull powertrain, right? Because I'm all like because I know that there's like a big difference between there's a Mercedes. The way the Mercedes works is a lot more smoother than the Renault and than the Honda. So, I think give him. Obviously, we're in the third race of the season. Like, he'll get there. I think he'll get there maybe midway through the season or towards the end of the season. He'll get there. I think it's just not working well so far. But I have faith. I think he'll get there. I think he's talented enough to get it together and eventually either beat out Yuki or be competitive with Yuki.
Yeah, I think my whole thing on it is like, yeah, you can say that it's that he's been driving Mercedes cars for all of last year, basically, but he's had just as much time in his car, actually probably more time than Oscar had with McLaren, and he was driving with Alpine in a Renault engine, and he's had definitively more time than Logan Sargent. He also clocked in the most laps during postseason tests with AlphaTauri. So, and it's also, I mean, it's 3 race weekends. I think we can stop using the excuse that it's just he needs more time, because Oscar Piastri clearly doesn't need more time. Logan Sargent probably doesn't need more time. It's just a Williams. So like, yeah, I think we can stop using the excuse he just needs more time. It's
You don't think Oscar Piastri needs more time?
I mean, he's
He
doing
does.
much better than the other 2 rookies. I mean,
Yeah, but I don't really rate Logan Sargent that highly, so that's not really a barometer for me.
I mean,
Sorry to the
Logan and
American.
Nick are 1 for 1, and they both have a DNF. So, I mean, right now I can rate them pretty much the same.
I mean, I know. I'm just saying. I think Oscar Piastri also has like the McLaren is a little better than the AlphaTauri. I think we can all agree on that to
Oh
an
yeah,
extent. Just a
100%.
little. Okay, so I think give him time. I'm not comparing them, but I think give him time.
Okay, and I did not do Williams last because they are last in my mind or in the standings. But we got Williams as our last team to talk about. And to defend them, I think their car is a little bit better this year. You saw what Alex could do this race until he messed it up.
Yep.
Get into that. He had a great qualifying.
Oh, it was a fantastic weekend for him. Minus the fact that just sheer driver error. I can't really defend him. He locked up the rear wheels and sent it to a wall, and then Stewart called out a red flag. So there's not much to get into. He had a fantastic weekend all weekend long. He was qualifying right up there with the best. I mean, he was only like 6/10 off the pole. Yeah, he lost it himself, honestly. And then Logan, there's not much to talk about there. It's this domino effect. Both Nick and Logan had to suffer from that one, so.
Yeah, I agree. Albon was like, "All right, adios, I'm clocking out of this race."
Go right, send it left barrier.
Hell yeah. And Logan, I don't know. That was just a domino effect. Maybe it could have been avoided, but somehow I doubt it. So I won't really give him too much stick for it. But I am kind of disappointed in Logan Sargent. Like, everyone says he's like good. I'm not seeing anything. He's not competitive with Albon. He's not. Albon is like, as much as I don't like Albon, he is a good driver. He's a midfield. He's a good, at best, a midfield driver, and he's putting that car in the midfield, like maybe the lower midfield, but in the midfield.
I'd say upper midfield is
Whereas,
qualifying.
yeah, we're qualifying upper midfield, but and Sargent just seems to be booping around in last place just as badly as Latifi was doing it. So I think
I'd still rate him higher than Latifi, honestly.
yeah, but like they're in the same position, so I think it has to be a quick turnaround for him because he's not James Valls' first choice. He wasn't James Valls' first choice for that seat, I'm sure, and I think it's this season or bust. In my opinion, it's this season or bust for him. So he's to pick it up a little bit.
I mean, so I guess in this case, Logan has to drive against a driver who's probably one of the better drivers in the midfield, and he's not doing fantastic. And Nick is having a hard time against somebody who's probably at the low end of the midfield, and he's not doing fantastic. So, I mean, yeah, it's not like I was expecting much out of Logan. It's his first year. He probably has a lot more expectation on him than a lot of people are willing to give him credit for, just because he is the first American driver on the full-time American driver on the grid since 2005 or something. But it's not like we're supposed to expect much from him. He's still driving in what is in essence supposed to be the worst car on the grid, and he's still a rookie. So he hasn't had nearly as much driving experience compared to the likes of Oscar Piastri, who's had an entire year in an Alpine. With like 5,000 plus kilometers on him, and he definitely doesn't have as much experience as a 28-year-old Nick DeVries. So I don't think we were supposed to expect as much from him, and I don't think he's going to be competitive with Albon at all this year. But I can't see it getting gone at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think they'll stick with him for another year or two, depending on how he does next year. All right, so one last thing to talk about. Danny Rick was in Australia at this race. It was great to see his smiling face amongst his native Australians. He was on the Red Bull pit wall, so that was interesting to see. But I'm glad he's back there, and he seems to have high hopes for returning next year
He looks
to a team. Yeah, that's true.
Shout out for the fans.
I found it. You know what I found really funny? Sorry to interrupt, but what I found really funny was I saw this clip going around where I think Tom Clarkson asked I think it was Zach Brown, Christian Horner, and someone else, and Tom Clarkson goes,
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, have you noticed any differences in Daniel? And Christian Horner it was a series of throwing Zach Brown under the bus immediately. He was like, don't know what you did to him over there. He's looking really skinny. And then he goes, we noticed he's picked up some really bad habits when he came to us that we didn't recognize from the old Daniel. So, we've cleaned those out of him. And I was like, yeah, you go, son. I might not like you, bro, but you're taking Zach Brown to church. And I'm like, yeah, say it, bro.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Maybe we'll link that clip somewhere.
Yeah,
because it's a good one.
Shout out to the Australian fans though. They were hype as heck. They gave 2 laps of the wave. And the commentator's like, oh, they're finishing up the race for the drivers of the wave. And also every single time something happened, when there was a red flag, they cheered because we get more laps. And every single time they saw
time Danny was
dude, it was awesome. It was probably one of the best crowds that they've had in a long time. So
but they stormed the track though, before the race was completely over.
Oh, that's about right.
Yeah,
I mean the race
that's a little scary.
over, to be fair, but
yeah, no, the Australian.
I think they're still on the track though.
That's okay.
They're still driving their inline.
Yeah, I think it was during the formation lap, the last formation lap effectively. But I think the Australian the safety thing for the track got brought up to the stewards and was just like, "Yo, boss, what the hell did you let them do?" So yeah, it was good seeing the fans. The Australian fans, they've been sort of deprived of F1 for 2 years now, and so did we race in Melbourne last year? Oh, we did. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
But I think
Max Verstappen DNF.
Yeah.
Yes, Charles win, Russell podium.
Yeah, they had, but I think two Australian drivers. Well, three Australian drivers, I guess, if we're going to count that. So, two native Australian drivers on the grid, and they got to, well, not on the grid, but in the paddock, and they got to see Daniel, and
Jack
Daniel looks
Doohan
like
was there
Yep.
Jackie D.
as well.
Dude, if Gasly, does anyone think if Gasly gets those penalty points that Jackie D is going to get in their car?
100%.
Yeah.
They don't have
Hell
anything else
yeah.
lined up, so he is their reserve driver.
Yeah.
One thing I'm curious about is Lewis is having a problem. And his problem is qualifying against George Russell right now.
Whatever, man.
Nothing.
He is 3-0 on qualifying against George Russell right now.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll probably see it like a second half turnaround. That's the type of driver that he seems to be. It's the type of driver like it seems like a lot of drivers who get older become like second half of the season drivers. Old Seb, old Kimmy, just like a lot of the older drivers like second half of the season they ramp it up like crazy.
No, but yeah, but I think Lewis is historically he's always been more of a second half of the season.
Yep.
Like he takes it sort of it's like sort of a flat, and then it just like goes up as soon as like Spa comes around and like the Europe starts coming around. So,
but yeah. So the other thing I'm curious about is so Lewis historically does not have a good reputation with having a competitive second driver. And this year it's starting to kind of rear its head again. With the way that he's commenting towards George. They're not like direct attacks on him, but rather attacks on the way that like they're subtle ones. And so even when he was made to like create an apology, it was like so it's still based on the one that he had in Saudi Arabia, and then they questioned him about it here, and he was like, yeah, George still did a great job, happy for him. So he made the apology, but then he was like, but yeah, so it's still like down to like roll the die, and so it's like he said sorry, but then isn't actually apologizing for the thing that he did. And so the same thing happened here, and like George qualifies better, and somebody makes a comment on it. He's like, yeah, George just, I mean, it's the same thing that happened last time. Just roll the die, and he just had it better again. I was just like, are you serious?
I think that's like the indirect shots. That's like the whole aspect of team dynamics, at least in F1, because I mean, it's you see, like you look at Red Bull, right? You had all those shots fired at them between Max and Checo from Brazil, and then you had shots fired after Saudi Arabia. You have all this tension that is in the team because it's like, so I think that's always been a part of Lewis's approach to having a teammate. He's nice to you,
but
in the media,
he doesn't have to do it.
Yeah, competitive. He never had to do. He was always nice to Valtteri. Who isn't nice to Valtteri? But but that's how he is. Like he did have some shots. He said that he took at Valtteri sometimes. But that's just how F1 is. That's how teammates operate. That's historically how Lewis has been. Max is like that. Charles and Carlos are like that to an extent.
Well, Charles
it's just
and
not
Carlos actually have this season they've died down a lot. Probably because there's not much to talk about between the two.
They're DNFing every 2 races.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's just Lando and Daniel had it. Well, Lando had it more than Daniel. Lando was taking shots at Daniel quite often.
Yeah.
So
well, I feel like Lando's weren't really shots. His are more like reality of the situation type deal.
No.
Like
but I remember
last year a lot of his comments were like, "Yeah, I can't help him. Like, there's nothing I can do to help him because I mean, it's just the way we drive the car." And we admit, like he was like, "Yeah, we both admit we have a garbage car. It's just we just have to figure out how to drive it." And so it's never anything against Daniel specifically. I just think he's just like giving us a very big reality check. Whereas like with Lewis, it's not reality checks. It's like, he's lucky. And it's like George is like, I'm not being lucky. I'm actually like busting my ass to make sure I get the right set.
Yeah. I think that's just part of like every team has different sort of points of tension. In the case of Mercedes, it's qualifying, and is George going to beat Lewis can he beat Lewis?
George has always been Mr. Saturday, so it's like not that surprising to me.
Yeah, and like I think also like Lewis is like obviously Lewis is the all-time pole setter, so he will get there, but he will get back to being that dominant force in qualifying and that dominant force in the race. I think he self-admitted that he's not comfortable in the car and he's not like really connected with the car this weekend. Maybe not because second row lineup and
He still
then
said it
to
this
finish
weekend.
Pete.
Yeah, he
Oh, okay,
said
I
it.
wasn't. So okay,
But that
so
that can also go a lot into like qualifying. If you don't trust your car to put all the pace into one lap, then it doesn't
yeah,
matter.
and I think yeah, I mean, I think it's just a point of tension for them. It'll probably be a point of tension for a while. Much like every other team, so it'll probably just wrap itself up at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ferrari, Carlos Sainz right now is sitting 14 points ahead of his teammate. He's been
Yeah.
qualifying. I mean, today was not today. This weekend was the first time he qualified ahead of Charles. Charles has no motivation right now. Like, he doesn't even look frustrated about the fact that he DNF'd anymore. He just looks defeated. And I feel like Ferrari is like slowly killing his will to want to drive. He's just
Yeah,
like,
I can see
yeah,
that.
like ever since let's say Spain last year, it's just been like a downhill slope with his mentality, and it's like it doesn't appear to have come back. It's like he's just carried it on into this year, and it's just getting worse and worse.
Uh, I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna get. Yeah, it's gotten pretty bad. This weekend was just like I firmly think it's gonna translate to next weekend. I think like if he doesn't have a competitive car next weekend, he's just gonna drive around and be like, yep,
Well,
yep, yep.
there's a 3 week break,
Yeah, I think
so
he'll be fine
that's
for
a
Baku.
good mental mind reset time.
Yeah, maybe so, but I can like it'll be. I'm sure it'll be a good reset. But as soon as he hits the track, and if he's not qualified second row, he's gonna be demotivated because the Mercedes have more pace on race day. So do the Aston Martins.
Yep.
So what? You're competing for fifth and sixth now. So, like, I could see Charles losing motivation pretty quickly.
That and also Baku's got to be terrifying for him because that's where his first DNF happened last year. Like,
Yeah,
it
man,
was it was also fourth race this season, and he's just going down the straight and his engine blows out. And like,
yeah,
first off, you already have the PTSD of like, yeah, my engine's blown out here before, and also now you're just like, I've DNF'd 2 races already, and my other race was
yeah,
like a 7th place finish, so
yeah.
not looking good for him. And Carlos, I mean, he's actually having decent drives. The 5 second
He's
time
gonna be.
penalty, it's unfortunate, but I think right now it looks like Carlos is much hungrier than Charles for something. Whether it's better
Yeah,
finishes or like just being in the race. Like Charles' drive, like his qualifying is great. He still does pretty well in qualifying, but his driving doesn't look at all exciting anymore.
yeah. I think it might be time to say bye bye to Ferrari for Charles Leclerc. So it might be time to look elsewhere.
Yep. What are your guys' thoughts on the possibility of Valtteri Bottas leaving Alfa Romeo this year?
Where is he gonna go?
Just leaving the sport.
Oh, that's kind of disappointing.
No, just
Why?
like in general. Just because
Oh,
there's
in general.
yeah, because it's like there's no rumors about it, but it's like you're driving a car where like you were supposed to be team lead, cool, and now your rookie teammate is appearing to do better than you. Alfa Romeo brought an upgrade this weekend too, and it didn't look like they brought an upgrade. It's just like there's
Yeah.
not much for him to gain anymore. He's not driving like he's a Mercedes driver anymore. He's not. His qualifying's not fantastic anymore. He got 1 points finished to his name this year, and maybe he'll get more. But it's like he's not going to be here when Audi comes around, and there's not going to be many teams that want to pick him up as he starts to deteriorate.
I mean, he's still showing like he's having a lot of fun off the track.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. So I don't know if I'd say he's deteriorating. I just think the car is not great, and this week it was just kind of Joe lucked into.
Yeah, I think we're giving Joe a little too much credit 3 races into the season. After all, he did get beat by Valtteri last year.
Yeah.
So,
But that was
I
last year.
think. Okay, but it's pretty much the same car. So I think give it more. We're only 3 races in, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Valtteri is a good driver. He'll get there.
Oh, we're not saying he's not a good driver. It's just like
You're saying he's deteriorating. He's
yes,
not.
I mean, it seems like it.
No,
Oh, wait,
I don't know if he's. I don't think you're assuming that he's deteriorating at a faster
No,
pace.
not
he's
fast. He's just you can see it slow. Like he's slowing down as a driver. Like, not by
Yeah.
a lot. It's just happening.
Yeah, maybe so, but I think he's got that pace to beat Zhou, and I think he'll be around till, maybe 2025.
Okay. I don't
I could be
know.
wrong.
Got any? You got any questions or comments thing for the watchers?
Oh yeah.
If they've gotten this far?
If you stayed till the end of the video or recording, whatever, let me know if you think that Carlos Sainz's penalty was justified. And also let me know if you think Charles is gonna DNF next race. But
All right. Yeah. Until next time, it's lights out, and away we go.